In this video, I want to explain what equals method is and how to write one. An equals method is we are using to determine whether two objects contain the same value or not. And to better understand equals method, I want to compare it with equal to operator. And this is an equal to operator that we have used so far. And I want to explain it by one example. This is really an easy example. Here we have declared two primitive variables and we have initialized them. So number 1 is integer and its value is 5. Number 2 is also integer and its value is 15. So what happens in the memory? When we run this program, on the stack, we'll have a number 1, and since number 1 and number 2 they are primitive variables, they are going to hold their values, and number 1 is going to hold its value. Then when we go to the next line, here we have number 2 and its value is 15, and on the stack we'll have number 2 and its value number 15. It will hold its value, which is 15. And here we have a comparison. We are comparing number 1 with number 2. And what are the values of number 1 and number 2? Are they equal to each other? No, 5 is not equal to 15. So that's why on the console we'll have not equal. Now I'm going to show what happens when we compare two objects by using the equal to operator. So far we have compared two primitive variables by using the equal to operator, and now we are going to compare two objects. Here by using the new keyword we are creating an object, and Ali is name and this is our department, computer science. And we know that objects are created on the heap and reference variables are created on the stack. So this is our object and this is our reference variables. And we know that reference variables are holding the address of an object. But the primitive variables, they are holding the value, their own value. So here, there is a creation of an object. Here it's created on the heap, and then the address of this object is stored in the student 1. So in the student 1, the address of this object is stored in the student 1. Let's say the address of this object is 111. I just made up. Let's say it is the address of it is 111. So the value of student 1 will be 111. The value of student 1 is going to be the address of the object. And why they are called reference variables? Because they are referring to the object. They are holding the address of the object. Next, here we have another object. It's Anna and English, and it's created on the heap. Here it is, and the address of this object is stored in the student 2. Here is our student 2 reference variable, and let's say the address of this object is 157. So 157 is going to be the value of student 2, and student 2 is going to refer to this object. So let's see, when we compare student 1 and student 2, this equal to operator is going to compare the values of these reference variables, and the values of these reference variables are not the same. The value of student 1 is 111 and the value of student 2 is 157, and since they are not equal, on the console we'll have a message not equal. And we can see that by using equal to operator, we cannot compare the contents of these objects. We are comparing only the values of the reference variables. So equal to operator, we are not using to compare objects. So to compare objects, we are using equals method. And now I'm going to show how to write one. And now I want to show you something. Many times students get confused with the equal to sign when we are comparing the objects. They ask, what if we change or we make the values of these two objects the same? What happens to the result? Will it be not equal or equal? The result will be the same. The result will be not equal. Why? And let me show you from the beginning to the end. Okay. So here we have a new object and its value is Ali and computer science, and this object is created on the heap. Okay, here is our object and its address is stored in student 1. And let's say the address of this object is 111, so 111 will be the value of student 1. Next, we have another object, another new object, and the value of this object is Ali and computer science. Exactly the same values as the first object. So Ali and computer, but different object. And let's say its address is 157. Okay, and 157 is going to be the value of student 2, and it's going to refer to this object. And now when we compare these two reference variables, student 1 and student 2, since the values are not the same, no matter what the values are in these two objects, whether they are the same, whether they are different, since the values of these reference variables are not the same, on the console we'll have not equal message. Since we cannot use equality operator to compare the contents of the objects, what can we do to compare the contents of the objects? So we are going to use equals method. So let's create a new class. Since I have given an example of student class, I'm going to create a student class. New class student. And in here, I'm going to add some instance variables. So student has name. Student has, for example, let's say department. Student has, let me make a little bit different data type, for example, integer, and integer is for ID. And to set the initial values, let's add a constructor method. So student string n is for name, string d is for department, and int I is for ID. So the value of n is going to be assigned to name, and the value of d will be assigned to department, and the value of I is going to be assigned to ID. Okay, now I'm going to create a new class, and in there I'm going to create two student objects, and let's say compare. This class name as compare, and here student 1, and let's give a name for this student. It's going to be Ali, just like in our example, computer science, and the ID, let's say 123. And the second student, I'm doing this on purpose, I'm going to just copy and paste and change the student 1 to student 2. So we have two different student objects with the same values, with the same name, with the same department, and with the same ID. Okay, so now I am going to take my student 1 and see which members or which methods can we call for this object. So if you can see here, we have equals, get class, hash code, notify, notify all, and here we have object. And what does it mean? What does it mean? It means all these methods are coming from object class. And we are going to see what object class is when we see inheritance. For now, just know that every class by default has these methods. Okay, built-in methods, if you like. So now these two objects have the same name, the same department, and the same ID, and let's apply equals method. Okay, so here let's say if student 1 equals to student 2, then let's say it student 1 and student 2 are equal. Else, I'm just going to copy and paste, are not equal. And now let's run the program. When we run this program, it says that student 1 and student 2 are not equal, even though we have two different objects with the same values, with the same name, with the same department, and with the same IDs. It says that they are not equal. And why is that? To explain why we have this result, I want to show what equals method really does. So for that, we should switch to debug mode. But before that, I'm going to put here a breakpoint. And what does it do? It tells the debugger to suspend the execution at this line. So it executes all lines until this breakpoint. And then there is a button, an icon, debugger. You click on it. And now we are in a debugger mode. And here we have a button, step into and step over. So what does step into button do? If there is a method, and we have a method, it's equals method. If there is a method, it's going to step into this method. It's going to enter the method. And this is something that I want to show. So let's click on it while we are on this line. Okay. And then here is the implementation of equals method. Here is the code of equals method. And you can see by default it calls equals operator, by which actually does the reference equality. It compares the memory location rather than comparing the contents. And the reason for this is it doesn't know how to do it, because it cannot work correctly for every class. The classes, there have been created many classes, and there will be created many more classes, and there is no way equals method can do the equality for every class. So what do? We should override equals method. So what is overriding a method? It is when you provide your own implementation, your own definition, your own code, if you like, for already provided method. So in our case, overriding equals method means we are going to provide our own code to check the equality of the contents of the objects. So we go back to the student class, And now we are going to override equals method. So we are going to write public boolean. The return type is going to be boolean equals, and the data type of an object that is being compared is student, obviously student, and the name of the object, let's make it student. And here let's add a variable status, an if statement, and in here we are going to compare these two objects. So if the name of a calling object equals the student's name, and if the department of the calling object equals the student's department, which student? This student that you are comparing with. And if the ID is equal to the student's ID. This is what I wanted to explain. Here, name and department are using equals method. They are calling equals method. But when it comes to primitive variable, ID was an integer. When it comes to primitive variable, we are using equality operator. Why is that? Because name and department, they are objects, they are strings, but ID is a primitive variable, and that's why we are using equality operator. Okay, next, if they are all the same, the status is going to be true. Else, status is going to be false. Now we are going to return the status. So let's go to compare class and run the program. But first of all, we have to switch to Java mode. And let's run the program. And here it says student 1 and student 2 are equal. Why? Because we have overridden an equals method here. So this is overriding the equals method, and we are using overriding the equals method to compare the objects the way we want.